Welcome to Social Psychology, Psych 230. Today we're starting a very interesting chapter on love and romantic relationships. And we're going to talk about these things. Actually, we're going to talk about these things. We're not going to get to everything today in this lecture. So usually it's going to be broken up into 2 lectures, maybe 3, but hopefully we can get out of the way in 2. But first we're going to define love. What is love? Okay, it's something that seems very hard to define. Okay, but there are people who have actually given it a shot. The research scientists have tried. They have some very good explanations of what love is. And we'll talk about the goals of romantic relationships. Why do we get involved in these relationships? What's the purpose? So we'll talk about those. And we'll talk about those goals, and then we'll talk about breaking up and staying together. That'll be on Thursday. We're not going to get through even all the goals today. So let's just start talking about what love is. Right? It's something that has been written about by poets and historians and all kinds of people. And they usually say something that love is just something that you cannot define. It's just such a wonderful thing. It's like impossible to define it. It's like we can all feel it, but it's just so hard to define it, to put it into words, right? Well, guess what? There is nothing that's too hard to define, too hard to tackle for scientists. So there are scientists who actually study love and they have tried to define it, okay? Like Beverly Fair asked, she did some research. I should have a year there, but I don't. Beverly Fair asked Canadian students to list as many features of love as they could in 3 minutes. Blank sheet of paper, write down as many things as you can think of that come to mind when you think of the word love, okay? This is what we call exploratory research, okay? Where they just write about anything they want, and then you analyze what they wrote, and you try to from there, try to see patterns, right? These are some of the things that students commonly wrote, some things that came up again and again. You know, caring, friendship, trust, euphoria, heart rate increases, happiness, warmth, commitment, sexual passion. Lots of different things actually came up, but these are some of the things that were commonly listed. So from this, we can begin to get an idea of what love involves, what love might be. Now, there is someone who took this a bit further and did something similar and actually, asked a bunch of students what they think about love, what comes to mind. And then this person did some more analysis, and that person goes by the name of, we'll talk about what that person's name in a moment. More research was done, more advanced research. And and then when you really do more analysis, you can break down that long list into actually 3 separate things, 3 factors, 3 things that define love. And the person's name that came up with this is Robert Sternberg, okay? He said there are 3 components to love. That long list, if you do some analysis, you'll find out that a lot of those words talk about the same thing. So they fall into 3 categories, and that's passion, intimacy, and commitment, okay? Passion is really the physical part about love, right? It's that physiological arousal. You know, when you see someone, you like them and your heart rate increases, right? When you long to be with them, when you're really physically attracted to them. Some people talk about that they have chemistry, right? They have that attraction, that chemistry. Sometimes they say it's a spiritual attraction. Sometimes they say, you know, whatever it is, it's a physical thing. It's the physiological arousal. They turn you on, so to speak. They excite you. You really like them physically, right? You have that. That's the passion, okay? That's the part about making out and having sex and things like that. That's the physical part. That's passion. It's related to the physiological arousal and all those other things. And then there's the intimacy part. Intimacy is when you feel really connected. You have that close bond, that strong bond, right? You share things, right? You talk about personal things. You like talking to that person. They like talking to you. You're very close. You support each other. You say nice things to each other. You share, you talk about your day. You have conversations, right? It's really about sharing and communicating, right? You're very close in that way. It's not physical at all. This is just the closeness, the intimacy, right? That's also involved with love. And then the last factor is commitment. Commitment. The willingness to define this as love, right? To define as saying we are in love, or I love you, or you love me, right? That you say you're in love, right? And also commitment to the long term, right? That you're committed to each other. You decide you're going to be together in this romantic relationship And usually that means that you're going to be with each other and not with other people. You're going to not date other people. You're not going to be hugging and kissing other people. You're not going to be having sex with somebody else, right? You're committed to each other. You're in a relationship, and you define it as that, right? We are together, right? Those are the three things that are involved in love, according to Robert Sternberg. He said that you need all three to have consummate love. If you want complete love, you need all three. You need the passion, that's the physical part. You need the intimacy, the closeness, and you need the decision, the commitment to be together. Consummate love, complete love, right? If you want to feel that you have real love, complete love that makes you happy, you need all three. Yes, you need the physical part, right? Yes, you need to be physically attracted to each other. Yes, you need the hugging and the kissing and the sex and that kind of stuff, right? You need that. That's part of it. And then there's also the intimacy. You need to feel close to each other. You need to talk and get along and like to talk with each other and like to share and have that strong bond, right? It's like what you have with a really good friend. You also need that in a romantic relationship. That's called intimacy. The communication, the sharing, the intimacy, that kind of stuff, right? And then there's the decision to be together, that you are a couple, right? That you're going to be together. Sometimes the decision, or many times, it's also a decision to get married, right? That we are together and we're going to stay together. Usually it starts out when you just decide to basically be boyfriend and girlfriend. And then as it continues, right, eventually you decide to get married and you make a stronger commitment. You need all three to have complete love, to have a love that fulfills you, that is wonderful, according to Sternberg. And it's a very, very good theory of love, derived scientifically. Okay. Interestingly enough, Sternberg also has another theory, and it's a theory of intelligence. And he says there's also three components to intelligence. That's interesting how Sternberg always seems to think in terms of threes when he proposes theories. So it's the triangular theory of love. And the interesting thing about this is that sometimes you're missing one or more of these, and that leads to other combinations, different types of love. So not all types of love involve the same mix of passion, intimacy, and commitment. And I looked this up for you guys, and I make sure I tell you about all of them there. But there's actually, looks like 8 different kinds of love that you can have. The one you want, of course, is consummate love. That means complete love. You have passion, intimacy, and commitment. So you have an X, right, for each one. They're all present. Romantic love is when you have passion and intimacy, but not commitment. In other words, you have the physical attraction, right? You have the physical part. You really talk, you share, you're close, but you haven't decided to be together. You're dating, for instance, right? You haven't made the commitment. You haven't asked, hey, let's, you want to be my girlfriend, you want to be my boyfriend, you want to get married, that kind of stuff. That's romantic love, okay? And then there's companionate love. Companionate love is basically when you have no passion. You're not physically involved. You're not having sex, right? You're not kissing, you're not doing stuff like that. You're not really physically attracted to each other necessarily. You don't really have the physical part, but you do have the intimacy. You are close, you do share, you talk, you communicate. And then you have commitment, the decision to be together. That's companionate love. For some reason, the physical part isn't really working. You know what that's like? That's like having a really good friend, like a best friend, someone you can really talk to, someone who understands you. That's the intimacy. And you decided you're going to be friends. You're always going to be friends, and you're always going to be together. You're not going to abandon each other, but you're not doing it, okay? You're not physically involved. That's that kind of thing. And by the way, those kind of relationships can make other people who you are physically involved with, who you do have complete love with, or you're in a relationship with, can make them very jealous, by the way, okay? To be that close to someone. That's called companionate love, okay? It's a really strong friendship, you could say, a very close friendship. And then there's fatuous love. Fatuous actually is another word for foolish love, right? When you have passion, right? But you have no intimacy. You don't really get along. You don't really talk. You don't share. You might not even like each other, but you have the passion, right? And then you also have the commitment. You're together. So you have the physical part. You're having sex, right? You're physically attracted to each other, and you decide to be together, but you don't really like each other. You don't talk, you don't share. It's not like you're friends or anything like that. It's kind of like, Sternberg calls it like fatuous love. It's like a foolish kind of love. And there's many relationships like that, where over time you lose the intimacy, you lose the closeness, and then you don't really like each other anymore, but you're together and you're still doing it, so to speak. But you don't even like each other anymore. You're not close anymore. You don't talk anymore. You don't get along anymore. You don't share. You don't have those deep conversations. And that's not a very good kind of love to have. Okay. But it can happen. Liking is just basically when you have intimacy, closeness. Let's say you talk to each other, you communicate, right? You're bonded, but you're not physically involved. You're not physically attracted. And you're not together. You haven't decided to be together or anything like that. That's just like, that's like a friend, but it's not a close friend. A close friend, a very, very, very close friend, that would be more like the companionate love. They're a companion, right? Like a soulmate or something like that, but you're not really physically involved. Not a soulmate. A soulmate could also be consummate love, but a very strong, very good friend, right? That you're always going to have, you're always going to be together, you know, but not necessarily physically. That's a companion love. But if you just like each other and you talk, you communicate, that's kind of like a friend. Not physically involved. You don't have to be physically attracted to each other, and you're not really committed. You just like to talk and you get along. It's kind of like a friend, but not a very close friend. Okay. And then there's infatuation, when you have passion, right? You're physically attracted to each other. You're all over each other physically, but you don't really talk. You're not really close, and you're not really together. That's kind of like infatuation. It's just a physical thing. Okay. Might also consider that like you know, like I don't know. I don't know if it's appropriate to call it like a booty call, so to speak, where you just call somebody for sex, right? You tell them, hey, come over, you know, I'm horny or something like that, right? But you don't really talk, you're not really friends, and you're not really committed to each other. It's that kind of thing. Empty love. This is really sad. When you have empty love, there's no passion, right? No, nothing physical. You're not doing it, nothing physical between you guys. No intimacy, no closeness, but somehow you're in this relationship. Maybe you're married, maybe you're in this relationship, and the passion has died out. You don't like each other anymore, but you're still together. Can you imagine if you're married and you're in a situation like that? That feels really awful, right? You can be in a situation like that where you lose the passion, you lose the intimacy, you don't even like each other anymore, but you're just together. You're together because you don't want to break up the family. You have kids, things like that, but you have nothing anymore except the decision to be together, but you don't have the other things. And it just feels like you're just together just for the sake of being together. And then non-love, if you're missing all three, then that's not love at all. And that's what Sternberg said about love. And I think it's a very good way to think about love, right? You need all those three to have complete love. All right, so that's how to define love. Okay, now let's talk about the goals of romantic relationships. One of them is to obtain sexual satisfaction. One reason people are together is because they want sex. They want to be sexually involved. And we're going to talk about who is actually sexually attractive. Who are we more drawn to, right? We'll talk about something called social sexual orientation. We'll talk about what that is. And there are differences between men and women, gender differences, arousing settings, and we'll talk about these things. Let's just get started for the sake of time. Let's talk about who is sexually attractive. I think we already know this, but I'm going to pinpoint it for you guys and mention what it actually is that we're attracted to. And some images for you guys of an attractive man, an attractive woman, an attractive man, right? Who's sexually attractive? And I know that these people have had work done, by the way. Yes, these people are rich and famous celebrities. Yeah, they do things to keep themselves attractive, so to speak, to the opposite sex, even though they're old. I think Brad Pitt's already like 50. That's probably when he was younger, though. That's Brad Pitt is the man on the bottom, right? And then that's Kim Kardashian. I don't know how old she is. She's in her, I know she's not in her 20s anymore. 30s, 40s, I'm not really sure. When you're a celebrity and you can do all this stuff to yourself, you can look really good even if you're older, okay? So who's sexually attractive? So in women, it's actually in both sexes, actually, it's high body symmetry, being symmetrical. That means that, you know, if they drew a line down the middle of your body, right, the left side and the right side would look almost identical, okay? Your arms are roughly the same length, right? Your legs, your face is symmetrical, right? If your face is symmetrical, it looks better, looks more attractive, as opposed to you have a one side of your head kind of has a lump and it sticks out to one side or something. That's not going to make you look attractive, okay? Some people have deformities like that, misshapen head, that makes you a lot less attractive. But symmetry is, you know, is important. It makes you look more attractive according to research. high bodily symmetry, right? If one boob is bigger than the other, that's probably not so good, okay? Although usually there's a slight difference, but having things identical from one side to the other, that makes you look more attractive, okay? Having a nose that is straight, not a crooked one. A crooked one is gonna make you less attractive. It's not so symmetrical, okay? Yeah, I know sometimes you can mess up your nose, break your nose or whatever it is, or make it, mess it up because, whatever it is, you got into a fight, you're playing basketball, got hit with the basketball too many times on your nose, things like that, it happens, okay? Now, so for both sexes, high bodily symmetry is important. And in women, some particular things make women very attractive. One of those things is called the low waist to hip ratio. And what that means, that is the hourglass figure, okay? What that means is basically your hips are in, basically, your hips. Your waist is in and your hips flare out, okay? And then it flares out a little bit toward the top. The boobs basically make it stick out. So you have that hourglass figure, and that makes you look more attractive. And you can see there, Kim Kardashian definitely has that figure there, right? If you have a so-called nice butt, right, then it flares out a bit and your hips flare out a little bit more, and you have those hips and that butt that sticks out and the boobs that stick out. It gives you that hourglass figure. If you're super skinny, by the way, you're just gonna look flat, okay? And you're gonna look like a young boy, and that is not so attractive. Anorexic, that is not as attractive, okay? Yes, women are supposed to have curves, and that means some fat on the hips, and the boobs are mostly fat, things like that. That's important. Lustrous, shiny hair, that's very important, right? Hair that is shiny and healthy looks very attractive. It makes you look attractive. And that's why so many people spend so much time on their hair and spend money to make their hair look nice. Some of them even wear wigs or extensions and things like that. It's actually very important to frame your face. It makes you look very attractive, right? When you have nice hair, right? Large eyes and a small nose for a woman, right? Large eyes, you know what large eyes do to a woman? It makes you look younger, more innocent, more naive, and guys like that, right? And the small nose, not a big nose, that's not attractive. A small nose, and that just makes you look younger. And men, yes, men are attracted to women who look younger, right? Not too young, right? Because then you'll be a pedophile. But I'm saying that the look of innocence is a younger look, and men like that, okay? Men, what's attractive in men, right? What kind of men do women mostly find more attractive? Well, masculine features, right? I know it doesn't say much, but let me explain that. Masculine features, so women like men who are tall, not scrawny, okay? But usually, not super muscular, but they have broad shoulders, some muscles, not super muscular like a bodybuilder. That's too much, right? But someone who looks like a man, that usually means tall, strong, right? Broad shoulders, that kind of stuff. A large jaw, when it comes to the face, large jaw, medium nose are important. Look at Brad Pitt there. Look at that jaw right there, right? That jaw is supposed to be very attractive, okay? And a medium-sized nose, not a little tiny nose that makes you look like a woman or like you're very young. That's not too attractive in a man, but a medium-sized nose, not a big nose either. Looking like a man means you look like you're strong, fit, mature, ready to reproduce. That's what women are attracted to according to research, right? And the sad thing is that a lot of men are at a disadvantage here. If you're a man and you are short, skinny, you don't look that masculine, and it's going to be harder for you to attract women, right? If you're heterosexual, and you know what, sorry to say this, but you know what women call some of these men that are short, skinny, scrawny? They call them dorks and dweebs and things like that. Nerds, even sometimes, many times they're not nerds, right? Because they're, not really studious, but that's what you look like when you are not fully developed. You're short, you're skinny, you don't look like a man. You don't look like, like you're ready to mate, ready to reproduce. You don't look like someone who's grown up and ready to raise a family, right? That's what's attractive in a man. And sadly speaking, I don't have too many of those features. I am short, I was always skinny, and I am skinny now too because I exercise a lot. And my nose is a little bit bigger than I would like and stuff, and I don't have the big jaw. But having a little narrow jaw, by the way, a skinny jaw, a thin face, does not make you look masculine. It makes you look less attractive, okay? That's what the research says. And some people have it, some people don't. And some people just get surgically enhanced. Celebrities always do. That's why they always look good, even when they're older. They can be 60 years old and they still look good. All right, so that was who's sexually attractive. Now let's talk about something called social sexual orientation. All these things are related to sex, by the way, okay? To being sexually attracted to someone and to having sex. What is social sexual orientation? Not sexual orientation, okay? Social sexual. Social sexual orientation are individual differences in the tendency to prefer unrestricted sex or restricted sex, okay? So it's like, what do you believe about sex? That's social sexual orientation. Do you believe in unrestricted sex? That it's okay to have sex with someone you don't love, someone you're not married to, someone who's just a friend, someone you just met, right? That's unrestricted sex. Some people believe in unrestricted sex, and they're okay with having sex with anytime, anyone, as long as they feel like it, right? And there's other people who believe more in restricted sex, that you should only have sex when you're in a long-term loving relationship, right? Maybe marriage, right? If you want to take it to the extreme, right? You should only have sex when you're married, or at least you should only have sex if you're in love and you're in a relationship, a monogamous relationship. Those are the extremes. Of course, you could be somewhere in the middle, okay? Where you're not totally restricted, not totally unrestricted, you're somewhere in the middle, and that's where most people are, okay? Social sexual orientation predicts the number of sex partners better than sex drive. Those that believe in more unrestricted sex are going to have more sex partners. They're going to sleep around more with different people, okay? And those that believe in more restricted sex, they're going to have less sex partners. Maybe just a few, or maybe they just believe in having one and they want to save themselves, you know, for marriage, right? This, which is a personality thing, by the way, social sexual orientation, predicts how many partners you're going to have better than sex drive. Some people have a strong sex drive, right? They're very horny, so to speak. They want to have sex a lot. That doesn't mean they're going to have a lot of sex partners, okay? They might have a lot of sex with one person. But what you believe about sex, whether it should be restricted or unrestricted, is a better predictor of whether you're going to have a lot of partners or not. And yes, the number of partners matters. You'll see that it matters especially to men. More about social sexual orientation. So those that believe in more an unrestricted orientation, those that believe that, yay, it's okay to have sex outside of marriage, you don't have to be in love, friends are okay, hey, someone you just met, it's okay, right? That kind of stuff, right? Those that have an unrestricted social sexual orientation will have more partners, okay? They'll sleep around more, okay? They're more likely to view their friends as partners, right? You can be their friend. Maybe you don't think about them that way, but they're likely to view you that way. Sometimes they are friends with you because they want to have sex with you, okay? And that's why they're sticking around. That's why they talk to you. But even if they're just a friend, they're okay with having sex with their friends with benefits, so to speak, right? Not everyone's okay with that. They begin having sex earlier. They're more likely to have multiple relations. They're more likely to basically cheat on you and be with multiple people at the same time. They feel less committed in a relationship if you're with one of them. They're less invested in a relationship. They won't put as much into the relationship. They'll be less in love and less interdependent. They won't need you as much. They believe in keeping their options open. And they can be with multiple people at the same time, friends with sex, strangers, that kind of stuff. And that's what they believe in. And I know people like this. I have a brother who's like this. I also have a friend, female friend who's like this, a friend from graduate school. My God, is she unrestricted. I mean, I've never gotten involved with her, but this woman cannot be loyal. She'll be with one guy, then another, you know, she'll go for whatever she likes at any moment, whether she's in a relationship or not. You cannot restrict her. She is free, so to speak, right? She believes in that, okay? And there are guys who are like that too. And sometimes you can be in a relationship with one of them, and yeah, they'll lie to you. They'll tell you they love you and that they're only with you, but they can be with other people. That's what they believe. They don't like to be held down to one person. They'll sleep around more. There are many people like that. And if that's not you, well, hopefully that's not what you end up with, because you can be hurt, okay? Those people cannot be loyal, okay? A study was done, an interesting study, right? When it comes to sexuality, there are gender differences in sexuality, or I should refer more to it as sex differences. There are differences between men and women. Interesting study that was done. So men and women were asked these questions. Okay, I guess this was a survey. They were asked, how many sex partners would you like in 2 years? So in the next 2 years, how many sex partners would you have, right? How many sex partners would you like? People you're going to be having sex with, how many, right? And what about in your whole lifetime? How many would you like in your whole lifetime? Okay, and this is what the study found in the graph here. Men are in black and women are in white there, if you can see it very well. So you can see in 2 years, men said they wanted about 8 sex partners on average. Some said less, some said more. Women said they only wanted about 1 in 2 years. 1 is enough. In a lifetime, women said, well, you know, about 4, right? Yeah, you know, more than 1, you know, on average is what they said, right? Yeah, it's, you know, probably try a few before you settle down, right? But men said they wanted 18 on average. Huge difference here, right? What does this say? 18, think about that, right? In a lifetime, about 18. It's like, yeah, it's like 1 every year or a couple or something. It depends. Some said a lot more, some said a lot less, right? But that was the average. What does this say? It says that men, on average, have more of an unrestricted social sexual orientation than women. On average, men want more sex partners than women. Men want to try more, have sex with different people more so than women do. Men are more unrestricted. Now, I know there are women who are very unrestricted too and who want lots of partners, right? And there are also women who want very few, and there are also men who want very few. But on average, men actually would love it if they could just have sex with a bunch of women. Not all of them, but I would say the average man, yes, right? If he was rich, handsome, famous, and women were just throwing himself at him, yeah, he would have a ton of sex partners. Most men, yeah, would like to have many, okay? More unrestricted than women. Again, there are differences. Not all men are like that, and not all women are like that either. And I have found examples of both, okay? Of course, very unrestricted women, very restricted men. Most people are somewhere near the middle. Most people fit those averages, okay? And by the way, it doesn't necessarily mean that men are gonna sleep around more than women. It just means that they kind of have a desire to. They can't all do it though. You know, you could have a man who's just not very desirable, can't attract a lot of sex partners, but trust me, if he was rich, famous, he'd want to have a lot for the most part, okay? But they can't all be a Brad Pitt, okay? Or a whoever is attractive right now. I don't even know because I don't keep up with the celebrities and the gossip and all that stuff. Okay, so men have this more of a natural drive, more of a tendency to want to spread themselves out a little bit more than women sexually. And we'll talk about why in a moment. We'll get to the theories, okay? More about this. Another study was done where students were approached by a very attractive stranger of the opposite sex. Because you know what, when it comes to these findings over here, this study, you might say, well, you know what, this was a survey. So maybe men are being honest and maybe women are just lying. Maybe women want as many partners as men do, but they've been taught that they shouldn't sleep around, that they shouldn't be that way. They need to save themselves for marriage, and that, you know, they're just lying. Maybe women are just lying. Or maybe men are lying and they really are just saying what they think is appropriate for men. So there's people who criticize this study because of that. Well, guess what? There was another study that was done that is not a survey. Here, this is more of a naturalistic experiment. Students on a college campus were approached by a very attractive stranger. So men were approached by a very attractive woman, okay? Like you might see on TV or you know, someone who's very attractive, okay? And women were approached by a very attractive man of the opposite sex, okay? And this person said to them, I have been noticing you around campus. I find you very attractive. And then this was followed by one of 3 invitations. Sometimes they were asked, would you like to go out with me tonight? Right? Or would you like to come over to my apartment? Or would you like to go to bed with me? Well, in other words, the last one, would you like to have sex with me? By the way, the question of would you like to come to my apartment is an indirect way of saying, hey, you know, you want to do this, right? But it's not as direct. It might mean they want sex. Many times it does. And many times it just basically means that, hey, come on over and let's see if you want to do this. right? So each question is more direct. Do you want to go out with me? Do you want to come over to my place? Do you want to have sex with me? Okay. This was a stranger who came up to you, okay, on campus. Very attractive man, a very attractive woman. A very attractive man approaching women, a very attractive woman approaching men. And here are the results, and they should not be surprising. Okay, so when it comes to the first pair, so again, men are in black, women are in white. So the first pair of bars there, right, is the date question. Would you like to go out with me? Both men and women, close to 50% of them, about 50% of them said yes. And this is a stranger, okay? About 50% of them said yes. You know, it's just a very attractive person, okay? Now, when men and women were asked, hey, would you like to come over to my apartment? Would you like to come over to my place, right? It's like a way of saying, hey, I probably want to have sex with you. Let's see where this goes, okay? In that case, for men, all of a sudden the percentage shot way up to almost 70%. It's like more of them said, yes, yeah, let's do this, right? And women, all of a sudden it went way down. Only about 5% or 7% of women were okay with going to a stranger's apartment, a very attractive man. Basically saying it's kind of like an indirect invitation to sex, okay? And then, would you like to have sex with me? And actually the question asked, would you like to have sex with me tonight? Or would you like to go to bed with me tonight? It's that kind of thing. Would you like to have sex with me tonight? For men, all of a sudden the percentage went up even higher, right? Above 70%, like 75% of them said yes. And women, none of them said yes. 0% said yes to this very attractive stranger saying, hey, you want to have sex with me tonight? And some women even got mad at this man. Many of them got mad. It's like, how dare you ask me that? Who do you think you are? Some of them tried to slap him. Very different reaction from men, however, when they were asked that question by that very attractive woman, okay? A lot of men, not a lot, so a lot of men said yes, and some of them even asked, why do we have to wait until tonight? It's like, right now, let's go right now. See the big difference in reaction? So this is more evidence that men are more unrestricted sexually, the average man, than the average woman. Why is this? Why do we see these differences between men and women when it comes to sex? We'll get to theories that explain that in a moment. Men and women also differ in their criteria for sexual partners. Men and women differ in what they want for someone they're going to have sex with. What should the person be like, okay? So when it comes to just sex, men and women are very different, okay, as far as what they want in a sex partner, okay? When it comes to who they want to marry, a long-term partner, then men and women are more similar. So here's the thing. Another study was done, okay, that asked, and I guess this was more like a survey, okay? What is the minimum amount of, or the minimum percentage of intelligence you would accept for a date, a sexual partner, a one-night stand, a steady dating partner, a marriage partner? So how smart does the person have to be for you to date him or her, for you to have sex with them, for you to have a one-night stand with them? Sex once, just that, right? Sexual partner, someone you're going to have sex with several times, okay? Steady dating partner, someone you're going to be going out with regularly, having sex with regularly, right? And someone you're going to marry, right? You're going to be together, you're going to have sex, you're going to have children, that kind of stuff, right? How much intelligence do you require for that? Here's what they found. It shouldn't be surprising. Okay. So women, again, are in white and men are in black. And you can see the graph here. Look at the labels on the bottom: date, sex, steady, marriage, right? So for a date, just to have sex, to have a steady partner, and to get married. So you can see the line for women in white, it keeps going up. They want the guy to be somewhat intelligent, right? To date him. If they're going to have sex with him, he has to be more intelligent. If they're going to be going steady with this person, then, like a relationship, he better be more intelligent. And if they're going to marry him, well, he better be really intelligent. Like, it's important, right? They don't want to marry someone who's not intelligent. Look at men, on the other hand. When it comes to someone they're going to just have a date with, right? Similar amount of intelligence as women. When it comes to just sex, all of a sudden, hey, she doesn't have to be that bright. It's just sex, right? So they're less picky for sexual partners and even less picky for one-night stands. Hey, it's just sex. Yeah, she can be a, you know, they say things like, yeah, she can be as dumb as a box of rocks. Doesn't matter. It's just sex, right? Someone they're going to go steady with, right? Well, they're a bit more picky about that. If I'm being in a relationship with this person, yeah, she better have some brains. Okay, I don't want to be with someone who's not too intelligent, who's not, you know, not that bright, right? And if they're going to get married, again, they want the woman to be intelligent. What does it say? Men make exceptions when it comes to sex. If it's just sex, you know, she doesn't have to be that bright. They don't care. Okay. What does this really tell you? Men make exceptions for sex. When it comes to sex, men are more unrestricted. But if it's someone they're going to be with longer, then they're a bit more picky. In general, you see that women are more picky than men. In general, you'll see, if you think about other things, that when it comes to a woman and what she wants in a man, she has a long list. Oh, he's got to be kind. He's got to be smart. He's got to have a good job, this, and this, right? Oh, big, long list. Men, list is short. It's more like, okay, I want her to be attractive. Yeah, she should be someone smart. And yeah, she should be nice and loyal, something like that, right? The list is much shorter. Okay. So again, more evidence that men are more unrestricted when it comes to sex than women. You have a bunch of studies here all telling you more or less the same thing. Let's talk about arousing settings. Other research that was done. Okay. Arousing settings. So there's increased physiological arousal. Increased physiological arousal often fuels feelings of passion. So things like that can, for instance, make your heart rate beat faster, can actually fuel feelings of passion, can make you feel more physically attracted to someone if you have more excitement. Physiological arousal can intensify feelings of attraction, that physical attraction. Okay. So there's a theory called the two-factor theory that says that emotions, including love, consist of physiological arousal and a label. So an emotion, let's say, like fear, has both the physical part, right? The increased heart rate, breathing, adrenaline, etc., and the label. The label is what you think. I'm going to die. Okay, that kind of stuff. Those two combine to give you the emotion as fear, right? Notice that something like attraction has a similar, is similar. It will also have increased heart rate, breathing, adrenaline, but the label will be instead, I'm in love, you know, or I really like this person, right? That kind of stuff. And that gives you the emotion of maybe attraction or love, whatever you want to call it. So we can actually confuse arousal, the source of arousal, and mistake fear and anxiety for love, according to this theory. The increased heart rate, rapid breathing, etc., can be confused for love. And let's see, I think there's a study that was done. Yes, here's the thing. There was a study that was done that actually shows you how this works. So consistent with, actually, this is mentioned several studies, consistent with a theory, with this two-factor theory of emotion, men report more attraction to attractive women in various arousing situations. Men report feeling more attracted to a woman when they're expecting electric shock. Let me explain that. In that study, men were recruited for a study, and then they're in a waiting room, and they're told, by the way, this study involves electric shock, where, you know, you're going to be subjected to electric shock later on, you know, and they get to try out the shock, and they see that it's painful, and then they get to wait in that room until the study begins. They actually don't know that the study has already begun. And then this attractive female experimenter comes out and asks them some questions. And then the researchers note how attracted the men are to the women. Some of these things they get to fill out on paper, and some has to do with body language and things like that. It turns out that when men are expecting electric shock, right, their heart rate goes up, the breathing goes up, right, the adrenaline goes up, and that those men who are expecting that report greater feelings of attraction toward the female experimenter than those who are supposedly in a different study where there's not going to be an electric shock, and their heart rate doesn't go up. There's another study that looked at a shaky suspension bridge, where basically the men, one group of men crossed a shaky suspension bridge like this one, right? That's really high up and it shakes, it moves when you're crossing it and you think you're gonna fall and die. What that does when you cross this bridge is it increases heart rate, breathing, etc. And then on the other side, this attractive female experimenter comes out and tells them, you know, hey, you just participated in a study. I want to ask you some questions. And some of the questions have to do with how attracted they are to her. Not directly, but, you know, it's not like, do you like me? But questions like, would you like my phone number so I can tell you more about the research? Would you like to talk to me more? Things like that. And they have questions in there to gauge how attracted the men are to the female experimenter, who happens to be attractive, by the way. And in another condition, the men cross a sturdy steel bridge where their heart rate, breathing rate, adrenaline doesn't go up. And then the same female experimenter is there and ask them the same questions. And as expected, the researchers found that the men are more attracted to the female experimenter after they cross a shaking suspension bridge. So they confuse feelings of fear, and the physiological response has to do with fear with attraction. The physiological arousal intensifies the feelings of attraction. Similar thing happens after exercising, whether you're pedaling on a bike or running on a treadmill or something like that. You get the heart rate going, right? And then you see someone who's very attractive, and it intensifies, it fuels feelings of attraction, because attraction also involves physiological arousal. It just involves different thoughts. So according to the theory, right, emotions have physiological arousal and the cognitive part, the thinking part, the label. The label and the thinking could be different, but the physiological arousal can be the same. And physiological arousal from one setting can increase feelings of attraction, right, that are unrelated, okay, to the actual thing that increases the physiological arousal. There is a lesson here, if you want to know more about attraction. If you're going to go on a date with someone, let's say they have agreed to go out with you. If you want to increase the chances that they're actually going to be into you, intensify their feelings of attraction for you, you should take them on a date that is exciting. You know, go to that amusement park, right? Get on those roller coasters. Go to that scary movie, right? Go do stuff that is fun and exciting. Not the library, by the way, the museum, not going to cut it, okay? But yeah, if you increase the feelings of arousal, you're likely to intensify the attraction toward you, right? If you go to on a date that's boring, they're not going to have much physiological arousal, not going to increase that much. And they're going to look at you and say, you know what? I really don't feel anything for this person. I'm not sure I want to go on a second date. I don't really feel anything, right? You can actually increase those feelings through physiological arousal because they've already agreed to go out with you. They already find you somewhat attractive, hopefully. So now you can just work on the excitement part and increase your chances, right, of getting a second date, of turning this into something of a relationship, okay? Let's keep going. Cultural norms matter, okay? So it matters what you've been taught as far as your culture when it comes to sexual satisfaction, when it comes to expressing yourself sexually, okay? So cultures vary in their acceptance of premarital sex, extramarital sex, sex without love. So, you know, people learn different things according to religion, according to culture, right? It varies. And this might be a little bit outdated already, but actually I think it's still accurate. I think this is still accurate. When it comes to Americans begin kissing at about maybe 14, 15 years of age on average, and they begin having sex at about 17. Actually, that's a little bit outdated. The average American starts having sex at around 16 now, a little bit sooner. And they probably start kissing maybe about 13 or something like that. So it's a little bit less now. This research is a little bit outdated. But in other words, Americans begin kissing, you know, relatively early, and they begin having sex relatively early before they're even adults. But Japanese people, Asian people in general, are more restricted sexually. Their culture is different, and they learn different things. They begin kissing, you know, closer to age 20. A little bit outdated, more like age 18, around there, okay, on average now. And having sex maybe 22, 23, yeah, maybe more like 21, stuff like that. Asian people, especially the Japanese, are very restricted. They're told to control their emotions, right? Not to sleep around, and that, you know, that you need to wait and that kind of stuff. And it's part of the culture. Asian people are not as open when it comes to, I'm not saying you can't meet someone who's Asian and they someone who's Asian who is the opposite, because there are plenty of people like that. But as a culture, they are more restricted. The Japanese, the Chinese, the Koreans, more restricted, right? When it comes to sex. Americans, hey, more freedom, right? We believe in freedom. Yeah, why not, right? We start earlier, and well, and we also have more problems because of that, right? But yes, there are differences. If you are also more religious, you're maybe going to start a little bit later, right? It depends. Okay, and you know what happens when it comes to religion? And what research, what I have actually found just in my own experience when talking to these people, or even research when it comes to people who are very religious and want to wait until they want to have sex, until they're married to have sex. You know what happens for the most part? They try to wait. Most of them can't wait that long, and they end up, not fulfilling that promise, or not living up to their standards, so to speak. But even those that do wait until they're married to have sex, what they end up doing is they end up getting married earlier, because they can't wait too long. It's like they can't wait. And they end up getting married like at age 18, 19, 20, right? They just can't wait. And so they just get married younger. Some of them even earlier than that. If you're younger, you can get permission from your parents to get married before you're 18 in some states. Okay, that's what happens. But yes, religion, culture, all those things matter when it comes to social sexual orientation. Some cultures are more restricted than others. Here in the US, we're very unrestricted. I mean, yeah, we talk a lot about religion and this and that, and some people talk about church and God and all this stuff, but trust me, most of them are exactly the same way, right? It's one thing to talk the talk, it's nothing to be able to do what that requires. Americans, for the most part, unrestricted, okay? Even though they try, okay? A lot of them try, some of them don't try, but those are the averages. Actually, a little bit less than that now, okay? Sexual situations, let's keep going. More about things have to do with obtaining sexual satisfaction, sexual situations, or potentially sexual situations, okay? Studies reveal that there are perceptual differences between men and women. Men and women are different in how they see situations, okay, and how they see interactions. There was a study that was done where men and women watched a 5-minute film of a man and a woman talking. Just watch a short little video clip of a man and a woman talking, okay? And then they were asked what they thought, okay? Turns out that men perceive more sexuality in the relationship. This man and this woman are talking, and the guy's more likely to think, right? Like, yeah, these two, yeah, they're doing it. Or these two, yeah, they want to do it, right? They're interested in each other. Women were not as quick to jump to that conclusion. Women were less likely to see it that way than men. Women were, were more likely to think about things like, oh, they're just talking, or they're just friends, or something like that. Why is that? We're going to get to those explanations in a moment. Actually, I don't know if we're going to get to it today. But when a man and a woman are talking, men are more likely to think that there's some sexual interest there, that you're trying to do something, you're trying to hook up, or maybe you already have, right? See that man right there looking at that person, those people talking? He might be jealous or something like that. Men are very, very jealous. If you're in a relationship with a man, sees you talking with another guy, he's likely to get jealous. Who are you talking to? What are you talking about? Right? And that's the way things are. Men are more likely to jump to the conclusion like, yeah, you like him, don't you? You want, like that kind of stuff. They won't always tell you that. But men are just more likely to see that. When a man and a woman are talking, they're more likely to jump to those conclusions. And when we get to that jealousy, you'll see that that's part of it, right? They're more likely to be jealous. So, and some of them very jealous. And we'll talk about that. And we'll talk about why. Why are men so jealous? Why are men so quick to think about those things and to jump to those conclusions? Let's keep going. Let's see, how far are we? We're not halfway yet. A little bit more, and we'll cut it there. Let's talk about a few reasons about why this is the case. Why there seem to be such differences between men and women when it comes to sexual things? Okay. So we're going to talk about these things. Some of these are theories. Some of these are hypotheses. They're basically explanations as to why we have these differences. So let's talk about one of these. Okay. We're just going to, a little bit more and we'll be done. All right. The Gudgeon hypothesis actually explains who we're attracted to. Yeah, we talked about sexual attraction as well, who we're attracted to. This hypothesis explains that. This hypothesis says that characteristics which signal good genes are more desirable in mates, right? Things that tell us that this person is a good physical specimen, right? Has good genes. We're more likely to be attracted to people like that. Physically, sexually attracted, right? And that really refers to physical features. So for a man, it's like, is he tall? You know, is he strong, right? Not, it doesn't have to be strong, but he looks like he's strong. He has those shoulders, right? He's tall. He has a good physique, that jaw, right? He looks like a real man, so to speak, like someone who can protect you. He looks mature, right? Someone who's ready to reproduce, someone who can take care. Well, let's leave that off for a moment. But he looks like someone who can basically who's gonna who is strong and healthy. Is really what's about. And if you have sex with this man, you have kids with this man, you're gonna have kids that are strong and healthy as well, because you're getting good genes from this person. And if they're strong and healthy, they're more likely to survive. This is an evolutionary thing, by the way. Okay, so we are attracted to people who have certain features that really have to do with an evolutionary advantage for survival. People who have good genes, right? They look bigger, stronger, healthier, right? In a woman, she's got those hips, right? That means she's physically ready for sex, mature, she's ready, she can have kids, right? That kind of thing. She has breasts, right? That means she's ready. Those breasts are for the offspring, by the way. They're for nursing. They're not for the man, right? But it's like he wants to make sure they're there and try them out and things like that, right? He's attracted to those things. These are things that indicate good genes. Physically healthy, strong, mature, right? That kind of stuff, right? Good genes ensure that offspring survive, that they reproduce and pass on their genes. It's an evolutionary thing. We're naturally attracted to these kinds of people because we want our children to be healthy and survive, is what the hypothesis says. So physical attractiveness signals good health, right? They're physically attractive, right? They have good good blood flow, good complexion, right? You have that reddish color, right? Whether you're light skin or darker skin, right? If you have a good complexion, that's good because it usually indicates you have good blood flow. You look healthier. You don't look sickly, right? And pale and things like that, right? You look taller, stronger. Like I said, in women, good set of boobs, right? Nice butt and hips and legs and stuff like that. You look like you're physically ready to reproduce, that you can produce healthy offspring. That's what the hypothesis says. It says that those people we're naturally attracted to are basically, they have physical features that we're more attracted to because those things are indications of health and fertility. Longer life, more chances of reproduction. Men are also attracted to people who are young, and women in general too. You usually are more attracted to people when they're younger. And I'm not saying underage, okay? I'm saying younger, okay? Yes, if you're younger, you look better than when you're older, by the way. You're more attractive when you're younger. When you're in your 20s, your late teens, than when you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Yes, you're much better looking, okay? Trust me, you are. Trust me, I'm older, okay? I'm in my 40s. You guys look a lot better, okay, than people my age, okay? Trust me, okay? And youth is very attractive. It's a sign of fertility. You're younger, you have more years left of reproduction, right? And that all increases the chances of having your offspring survive, right? You can produce more offspring. You have more years left, right? As opposed to someone who's older who cannot even reproduce anymore. And you're younger, you're healthier, you look more attractive. That's what that means. You're more attractive, so you're younger. Usually means you're younger, healthier. You have certain features that are attractive. What the hypothesis says is these are all things that ensure the survival of the offspring. Reproducing, having sex, being physically attracted to someone who has these things, as opposed to someone who's sickly, or someone who's short, or maybe deformed in some way, or let's say someone who is, old, who might not even be able to reproduce, going to produce defective sperm, or even has gone through menopause as a woman, can't even reproduce anymore, or looks older and it's not even going to be there to take care of the kids for that long. That's what the hypothesis said. That it has to do with, it's an evolutionary thing, it has to do with survival. Here's another theory, the good investment hypothesis. So this one explains why we're attracted physically to certain people. And this one explains why we like certain characteristics in people. Ever notice that, we say, yeah, we want someone who's intelligent, someone who's kind, someone who's hardworking, right? And loyal and things like that. Those are not physical things. Those are things that have to do with a good investment. This theory, this hypothesis, it's a hypothesis. It says that we want characteristics in our mates and our partners that signal partner support and help, right? We look for certain things that tell us this is a good person. This is someone who's going to stick around and help me raise these kids. You might not be thinking about having kids, but this is kind of evolutionary. It's biological. You can't help it. It's just biologically ingrained into you. And that's why you're attracted to certain people. So support and help ensure that offspring survive and reproduce and thus pass on their genes. That's why you hear people say, I want someone who's kind. You want kind people raising your kids, not mean people, not aggressive people, right? You want people, aggressiveness is a little bit different. I'll mention a little bit that in a moment. Aggressiveness could also indicate strength and the ability to protect. So that one's could go both ways. But you want someone who's kind, right? And nurturing and who's loyal, right? Who's going to stick around. Someone who has a good job, right? Because they're going to be able to provide, okay? That kind of thing, right? Because support, these all have to do with support and help. Support and help ensure offspring survive, right? And that they, and that they survive and long enough to reproduce and then pass on their own genes. It's about survival of the species. So yes, people are attracted, women are attracted to things like wealth and status. A lot of women will say that it doesn't matter to them, but yes, if the guy has some money, a good job, it matters, okay? It makes him more attractive, more desirable. If he's rich and has a ton of money, even better. If he has high status, right? He's a lawyer, he's a doctor, he's a congressman, right? Yes, these people have a lot of options. A lot of women want them, okay? Or maybe they don't have that yet, but they have ambition. Maybe you meet them when they're younger and they say, yeah, I'm gonna go to graduate school. I'm gonna be a doctor. I'm gonna be a professor. I'm gonna be a lawyer, right? That is also an indication that this is someone maybe you might want to keep around. Or availability of resources, right? They have things, right? They have money already. They already have status, right? All that is very attractive to women. Women like that stuff for a reason. Men, they like that stuff, but not as much as women do, okay? Yeah, they wouldn't mind, marrying a woman with some money, but it's not the most important thing for them. They'll marry someone who's poor and really attractive, okay? Other things that matter, if you want someone that's a good investment, right? That's going to stick around, help you raise those kids, right? Are they kind, right? Not someone who's going to be beating up your kids, right? Are they trustworthy? Can you trust them, right? To do a good job, right? To take care of your children and you and things like that, right? All that matters, right? All that signals willingness to help, provide support. It's important for survival of the species. So almost everything, when women have this long list of things they want in a man, almost all of those things, except the physical stuff. Yeah, they say they want a guy who's tall and handsome, right? That's the physical stuff. That's good genes. But they also say, oh, I want a man who's kind and loyal and trustworthy. He has a good job and he's going to take care of me. I mean, they don't always say that. Okay, I'm being a bit sexist there, but he's kind and loyal. He has a good job, right? I want him to be a good person, right? What are they really saying, right? According to the good investment hypothesis, they want someone who's going to stick around and do a good job. Someone who's kind, not someone who's mean, not someone who's an asshole, right? Not someone like that. You don't want to marry someone who's like that, right? And that's what they're really saying, according to this hypothesis. I'll stop there.